It's summertime in the Northeast, and the folks that live up here in the Northeast to me are funny because when summertime comes, they complain about being hot. And there's four seasons, if I remember correctly, in the year, and summer's supposed to be hot. Do this. Grab something cool to drink, wipe yourself off, stop complaining. Welcome to another edition of When Black Men Talk. It's held inside Elliot's Loft. And by now, there's certain segments that we have that we do inside of When Black Men Talk. Common ground, up from the ashes, and provocative conversations. This segment is going to lean more into up from the ashes. But before I kind of roll into that, I want to kind of give a description of the young lady that's going to be speaking with us in this episode. She's our petition strategist. Say that word a few times. A speaker, workshop, facilitator, author, singer, and actress. I'm speaking of one Renee Ambush. How are you?
I'm fine. How you doing? Good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm glad that you're here. The word itself kind of catches me. So if you don't mind, give us a little more in-depth reference to what's an impartition strategist.
Yes. Okay. So this is how I usually describe it. I tell you what it isn't first. So I am not a life coach because I'm not the giver of life. So I don't coach people on something I didn't give them. And I'm not a motivational speaker because motivations are only for your soul, your emotions. So once you leave a session with me, I don't want just your soul to be healed. I want both your soul and your spirit for you to be uplifted beyond just a 45-minute session. So what an impartation strategist actually does is I literally pull out those things that are already within you, the innate abilities and strengths and creativity and purpose inside of you that has been stifled by challenges, circumstances, obstacles, and just life itself. My background is that of a mental health behavioral specialist and therapist dealing with trauma and relationships. So that would be kind of like the gist of what an impartation strategist is.
Okay. Now you're the founder of Out the Box. And I like that title.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah. Now, what is the primary focus behind that? Mhm.
So out the box came, I want to say it was like around I'm dating myself, 1996 or 7. I had just found myself doing more ministry within the church realm, the ecclesiastical realm. And I started with Wish, Women I Shall Help. And it was really just kind of like a women's group that I would kind of mentor, I would impart into and pour into. And what I realized was that it wasn't just women who were having challenges and dealing with things. Our men were having a lot of challenges that they needed to navigate through. And though I really believe that men should mentor and pour into other men, there are some things that we as women can do to help our men, many things that women can do. So, as a person who was licensed and ordained in the Christian faith, I realized that not only were people going through things, but that within the church realm, we were put in a box. We were being forced religion and not understanding the relationship that we need to have with God and other people. So I realized and I felt in my spirit all the way down in there that people needed to come up out of the box. And I even had come up with the mantra or the motto for that is where you are is not necessarily where you ought to be. To step out of the realm of self incarceration and be free. Step out of the box.
Hmm. I like that a lot. I want to go back to the men just for a second because it's hard for men sometimes to even really reach out and want help and seek
Mhm.
help. Or did you notice they were reluctant when you were working with them to actually to ask for help?
I'm going to say this. I personally didn't find them to have a challenge with reaching out to me, and I think because of my approach, um, because of the spirit or energy or what one would whatever one would call it that I brought with me, that 9 out of 10 times, what that male said specifically was, "You exude peace." And so, if it's nothing else that I've learned that a man desire, needs, and wants is peace. So, bringing that to a person and a male, definitely a male, they're more apt to open up. I also just want to say that, again, approaching them as well or speaking with them as well, they could realize and hear that I had a huge sense of emotional and intellectual maturity, which meant that I was able to hear what they were saying and not just listen.
My goodness. When you said the word peace, a big smile came across my face because
Wow.
it's really it's such a common thread among men, and a lot of men we respond to it, we seek it, we desire it, but we don't even speak of it
Yeah,
because I think a lot of cases where we've gotten to a point that we don't think it's just possible, which is sad to think, but it's
right.
amazing when a man feels there's peace there, how things open up. Now, you're also an author, and this is another
Yes.
title I love. Oh, Silent Scream or Silent Screams. I might have dropped off the S if I did. Please forgive me. Very
That's
strong
okay.
title. Share some insight, please.
Yes, silent screams, sounds children hold inside. So that is the first book of my series. You wouldn't believe it if I told you. That is my first book, and it's actually an autobiography. So it tells a lot about what I experienced from age 6 to 16 with sexual abuse. So it helps one who has been or found themselves in any kind of sexual abuse situation to help them become affirmed again, to understand who they are, to navigate what things come with sexual abuse. So, with navigating what I had to go through with those screams, it was like a lot of times I was speaking out loud, but nobody heard me. And so, these are the sounds, like I said, that children hold inside. And it's so many people who are adults at this moment that have had that sexual assault or abuse as a child, the incest, the molestation, rape, those things have happened, and they've kept those things inside, and not really understanding the depth of why they have certain characteristics and behavior patterns that they do until they actually start going back and begin to listen to the sounds and the screams that they were making, and or have someone like myself that would be able to listen and help navigate past the processes of those things that they still experience due to those silent screams. So that is a book pretty much about me and what I went through up until about maybe 18. That's, like I said, that's the first part in the series of just navigating life after a lot of sexual abuse.
Most people, well, I shouldn't say most. I mean, some people that experience those type of things, those sad things, they tend to maybe push them down and cover them up and hide them. How are you about releasing it and putting it on the forefront and bringing it out to the forefront?
Well, let me first say this. According to my children, I'm very transparent. They're like, my son, he's 27. I would say 27 because that's so sad that you can't remember your kid's name, but he's 27. And he went on a podcast and he was speaking about his life. And he so put me under the bus on blast, put my whole government name out and was like, my mom, she navigated through a lot and she did the best she could as a parent. She will tell you her story. Renee Ambush, look her up. I was like, well, darn. So, so apparently, but I am forthcoming with my story though, because I realized, like I said, those silent screams cause so many poor behavior patterns and poor choices that when I started navigating my healing, I'm like, wait, not only do I need to speak these things out, and I have a line of t-shirts called Heal Out Loud. We have to speak these things out, of course, in healthy and in positive environments and supportive environments. But those things I realized I needed to speak them because I wasn't the only person that went through it. And what I also realized is that when you have individuals that navigate really challenging things or anything, and they actually begin to thrive beyond that, I kind of feel like it's their duty to go back and speak about it and to help other people.
I hear you with that. I definitely hear you. Let's speak to how people can get in contact with you because you offer a lot for someone that could be hurting and dealing with some things they may not know where to go. So let's go there for now.
Okay. My website is www.reneeambush.com. And that is RENEEAM, like Mary, B believe, USH.com. You can find me on all of platforms. On Instagram, I'm Rebirth of Renee. On Facebook, I am Renee Ambush. And I just want to interject and say this because about my name. I was married 3 times. And when I got my third divorce, one of the things they asked me, and I sound Tina Turner-ish, but they were like, "What is it that you want?" I was like, "My name. I just want my name." So once I reclaimed my name, it was another way of reclaiming my identity and again reintroducing myself to that part of myself that I needed to heal and deal with. So it's Renee Ambush pretty much on everything. On TikTok, I'm Renee Ambush 971. Don't ask me why they gave me the 971, but that's what I am on TikTok. And so those are ways you can reach me for therapeutic services or impartation strategy services. But I'll later on give them how to reach me for my radio platform. How about that? Mhm.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds real good. Renee has been kind enough to come on and be part of Up from the Ashes. And I want to go into detail a little bit more about Up for the Ashes before she does, because it's a segment that we have here. It's a branch realistically that someone comes in and basically talks about their life, speak about their life and things they have dealt with, how they've overcome them. And throughout the process, we realize how God has carried us from one point to another. In reality, we do this to give glory back to God. So, and all of that fits under the term Up from the Ashes. And she's here to basically share. And I say that to say it's not easy. When people come on realistically, a lot of times when they start to speak, and they think people are listening. Sometimes people clam up. Sometimes but people don't even come. So the mere fact
Mm,
that you're here and others really show up and don't mind opening up, I applaud that and I respect that and I think that deeply. So we'll go back to the time when Renee Ambush, you have your name back after 3 times.
yes, yes.
let's go. Let's go back to Renee when she was a little Renee Ambush, and let's start there. How were things there?
So, little Renee Ambush, I was always uh, a show. I was always a show. I remember young years, I would give concerts on my porch. People would come and I'm just singing and singing, and I'm just like, oh, I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to sing. And I did do that. It wasn't a straight shot, but I did get there. But I'm like, I'm going to sing. I was happy to a fault or to a point. I was very lonely. I was the only child for a while from my mom and the youngest from my dad. And so I was lonely a lot, but that lonely allowed me to be creative. I wrote songs, I wrote poems, I made clothes, I did hair. I was always a creative. And I think just saying that a lot of times when we are creatives as children and we don't know that, or we have children who are creative, a lot of times people who don't understand that stifle that. So I just kind of want the listeners to know, if you or hone in on their children or the children around them, if they see that they have special gifts and talents that they gravitate to kind of pour into and support them with that. I wrote poetry, I wrote plays, I wrote songs. That was little Renee, but little Renee also hurt so much. And she hurt so much because, like I said, she was lonely. And because of her experience at 6 years old with the incest, she had no self worth. In fact, after all of my cousins did what they did to me, they no longer wanted to deal with me. So I grew up in my teenage years thinking, okay, if a guy likes me, I got to give him something, or he's not going to want me. I've got to give people something. I have to please them to a degree to make them like me, or whatever the case may be. So that was a lot of Renee, which caused Renee at an early age, probably starting as young as I can remember, about 6 or 7 years old, was also my first suicide attempt.
Oh,
Oh
you know,
yeah,
you
we real, Mark. We real
yeah,
today.
oh, we love the real. You touch on a word that over the years, incest, that we don't hear
Yes.
much about. I know when I came up, you heard about a little bit, and it seemed like it was a word that people threw dirt over and they covered up. And the more it
Yes.
got covered, the more it got exposed, the more it tended to happen. I'm interested to go into. when it happened, you said it was family members. How did your initial family members, uncles, mother, grandmother, grandfathers, how did they respond to it when that took place?
Well, very interesting enough. It started, like I said, when I was about 6 years old. And it was, yeah, 1976. And there was about one, two, three, four, about five male cousins that took turns fondling, inserting, just, literally, just having their physical sexual way with me. Then there were female cousins who would take brushes, broom handles, anything that could fit and do the insertion. And that actually, like I said, continued on. And what happened was as I became a when I became a teenager, I know I'm kind of going all over the place a little bit. When I was 15, I was removed from my mom's house, and I love her. We have an amazing relationship now, after about 35 years. But my mom asked me to leave her house. At that time, she had a male friend who liked me more or expressed or whatever, and it was either him or me. So I had to leave. And after leaving, I think that was my last straw about 15. I kind of started talking about what my family had been doing to me throughout the years. But it was a little difficult because I was then living with my aunt and uncle, and my uncle was molesting me. And I could only stay in their home, if I had sex with him. So it was about when my 20s or so, when I started actually speaking about what took place and I started writing Solid Screams. And I'm going to tell you, you have to be very strong, heal and deal. That's one of my mottos. You have to be real with what happened to you, deal with what happened to you so that you can heal from what happened to you. Because once I started healing and talking, I definitely became the black sheep of the family. I got death threats. I was going to get beat up. It's just all sorts of things because on my healing journey, I chose to start speaking. So I've always been, like I said, since six, I've always been like really lonely. So I had been alienated from any real connection with these people anyway. And so even to this day, it's still something that's a challenge to speak with about my mom. We don't really talk about that. And I understand as a mom, you put your child in your family's care, assuming that they're in a safe place. I told my mom, I don't think you left me at anybody's place looking for me to be molested. Not at all. Right. But I understand as a parent, and a parent that is doing their best, they want to protect their child. So, it's still some things that I navigate with family. I've got family that, again, I've long since forgave them. And, when they come to visit the state that I live in, I'm like, oh, it'd be good to see you. And they're like, no, you're a casualty of war. We don't want to. Hey, guess what? That means you still have to navigate whatever you have to navigate with. But I've long since released that, and forgiveness allows me to live.
Beautiful. I'm happy to hear about the forgiveness. Real happy about that. But I want to circle back to the 15-year-old that you were at one
Mhm.
point in your life. And these questions and my thought process is not to point out blame. I'm happy you and your mother are where you are. But, we have to, for me, I like to deal with the obvious.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes the obvious is not stated, but it should be stated. And thinking, I'm looking at you at 15 when you're staying with another family member. And if I understand correctly, one of the rules were if he was to be with you, it was okay. And this is, I guess he was with your aunt. As a woman, what's going on that time with her to where, and this is not trying to put on blasting their nature, but these things happen. And I don't think
Mhm.
as our community we should run from them. So
Right.
I'm looking at a 15-year-old young woman that's coming to be with another older woman, and her male mate, is on to you, and she's not raising hell about it. What's going on there?
Well, let's like you said, let's talk about that. Those are things we sweep under the rug, right? And sadly enough, I'm going to say our community because I only live in our community. But a lot of times, and I know far too many stories that have the same similarity. When you have that woman who's like, listen, I want my husband at any cost. I'm willing to sweep anything under the rug or bypass it. Now, I'm going to tell you, she treated me horribly, right? So I know that she knew. But at my 15-year-old self, I didn't knew she I wouldn't have known that she knew. But there had to be a sense, if you're married and married to this person, you have a certain connection where you know things, right? So I'm pretty sure that it was known but not dealt with, and I kind of got the brunt of being treated kind of, like poorly or whatever. So I did all that I could to stay out of the house as much as I possibly could. So, that means I was staying over other guys' houses, like my little boyfriend or whatever, or over friend's house or whatever I could do. I was going to school and then going to work. As little time as I could, had to spend at the house, I would, right? But again, I'm 15. So, it was never spoken about. To this day, it's not even spoken about. And, when I made known to, his daughter, she, at first it was like, my father was wrong, you were the child, it shouldn't have been. And then, after the book, it was, kind of a death threat, like you put our family business out. But I'm just like, this was my thing. And, maybe, well, I'm not going to say maybe, it is what it is. My thought process in doing the book was one, for healing, for helping other people, and for all of those who was like, you should not have written a book to out your family. My response is, my family should not have given me content to write a book for.
There it is. That's amazing too. It's like you can keep a lid on the ugly stuff. Go outside, portray like inside the house is all clean and spectacular, things are great. And as soon as somebody opened the door and basically show what the inside the house is a mess, that becomes the problem. Not the stuff that went on inside the house. It's the mere fact that family has to walk under a certain umbrella of shame, embarrassment, or whatever. Long as you don't change the perception, let's be honest, in black families, it's okay. It's okay.
And
We just
Mark,
kind of deal with it. Yes.
And Mark, the thing about it is, this is the thing. So, because of the incest and the molestation and things of that nature, I was pregnant at 14. So I didn't, I was forced to abort that baby. But the thing about it is, now I have a mark on me where I'm labeled by people in my family. I'm promiscuous. I'm hot. I'm these negative things that we, give to dogs and things of that nature. So it was easier to pin all of, and it just kind of makes me feel like, not that I am Jesus, not that I think that, but what I'm saying is how all the sins were pinned on him at the cross. It was like all of that blackness and darkness and shame and everything was pinned on me for what was assumed to be outward behaviors of promiscuity and things of that nature. But it was all only to cover up. We don't want ours to go out. So you can be the martyr or you can be the billboard of nastiness.
Hmm. Amazing. No, there's nothing wrong in saying like Jesus to me on the cross because we all are given certain, things to bear in our life, good or bad. We are given those things, and we're given those things for a reason. And look what you turned into what you had to bear. Look what you turned and took that
Yes.
and mold that
Beauty
into.
for ashes.
There, what God has basically allowed here again, up from the ashes, allow what to take place from, was horrible what happened to you. But look how he took that and turned that into something beautiful that you're doing for other people. So I'm gonna go now to your age of 19, 20, when it seemed like when the realization the realization starting to hit you, what really was going on, and really starting to understand and start to speak out about it. I get where people are upset and maybe starting to console you, but what were you feeling at that moment? What were you going through?
Well, I want to say that at 18, I became a mom. And that changed my whole perspective on a lot of things because I realized that here it is. I'm 18. I'm living on my own, of course, working. I'm raising this baby, but I never really was raised myself. So I started seeking out, who am I? How do I do this parent thing? What's going on with me? And knowing, even though not maybe to the fullest degree, but knowing there were some things I needed to deal with within myself so that I didn't project them onto the child I just had because it wasn't his fault. Right. So I started looking at a lot of things, but that was also the time around 19 that I started regularly going to church. And then at 21, actually, then accepting Christ as my savior. And I'm not going to say that when I accepted him, I changed my whole world because I was still going to the club, but it was a process. It was a process, but I started studying more of who and how the God who created the heaven and the earth created me. And when I saw that he saw me way different than how man or others saw me, I was like, you know what? I've got to go on this journey of seeing myself like that too. And healing hurts. Healing is messy, but healing is necessary. So that's when I started having to deal with, me and start looking at things different. And then I also started college later around that time. And, being a psych major, a psychology major, and social work major, all of the studies that I had and, and different behavioral modules and models and different people and looking at different things and developmental things. I started looking at me and I became my own doctor for a minute. I became my own therapist to help me navigate through some of these things. And I think that's where my 19 to 21ish became. I had a baby and things had to be different.
Okay. I'm going to go back again to you having a baby because a lot of times people at that age or young ladies at that age have a baby, and just based on what happened in your life can go a lot of different ways. And you had the maturity and the mindset which God gave to you after this baby. I'm not going
Absolutely.
to bring on to what I experienced in life, but at the same time, go on to college. Usually it's done the other
Working.
way around. Yes, usually it's done the other way around. You do college, you do the work, you do the baby. You have it first. So let's go back to that mindset because to me, that is very important because for something inside of you clicked. I hear what you said about not bringing on to the baby, but something inside of you clicked to where I must do something greater and better for the future. How did that get you to college? Because it would have been
Well,
easy for you just not to do such.
yeah, absolutely. But you said the key thing. I was what I give to people as an impartation strategist. I allowed God's spirit to click, right? I connected to a local church or assembly at that time that something, well, his spirit was like, there's something else to this thing called life. It just can't be this. It's got to be something different. And to a point of me just being stubborn too in a positive way. I'm like, I'm going to go on to see what this end going to be. And I'm going to make something greater. Let me people, everybody who knows me knows I love that I was born and raised Baltimore City. I bleed purple. I stand for my people. It is so many wonderful things from Baltimore, and I am one. But when I say that to say I didn't want to be the statistic. I didn't want to raise a black boy in the inner city that was into a lot of things that were negative. So it's like, okay, how do I do that? And I'm like, the way that I can do that is to better myself. I'm gonna be honest with you. College wasn't in my purview, but also I'm real and transparent. All of my friends who graduated with me, that of course didn't have babies, they went to college. And I looked at that and was like, you know what? They're bettering themselves. And I want to do that too for me and my child. I don't always want to be in the inner city of Baltimore. So I did. I moved out into different areas of Baltimore. I made sure I put my children in like multicultural places and different activities and environments because, again, it was only God showing me that there was so much more than what I had experienced and what I had seen in my own life.
There's the glory. I want to go back. I want to come back here. I'm gonna make a little mark here. Let me write this down. Make a mark. Come back here.
Mark gonna
But
make a mark.
yes, but I want to go because when you talk earlier, I heard about your mom,
Mhm.
but I didn't hear much about dad. And
Because
I want
Dad
to
could have
go.
been an episode on The Wire.
Okay, so I want to go back to the early part of your life as Renee Ambush about
Mhm.
dad, if you don't mind. Let's hear about dad some.
Earlier, my early memories of my dad was going up to the penitentiary, seeing him either behind a glass or taking a picture with him, and I still have pictures to this day. Dad was never in the picture. Never. Ironically enough, he was close to the picture as he married someone that I actually worked with and didn't find out until I was like, I think I was about 16. I had a summer job, 16ish, and I worked at Equitable Bank, and they would always mess up my check and it would go in another department. And I went
Mm,
over to the other department and was like, they said somebody over here has my, what's the name, my check. And this lady, her name was Alice Ambush. She said, "Yes, baby, I got your check. They sent it over here by mistake." And it was my father's wife. I'm like, at that point of 16, and I didn't have a relationship with him. I could care less. Just give me my check. That's all I wanted, right? And stop mixing my stuff up. That's all it was. But it wasn't until later years, I want to say in my late 30s, maybe 30, almost 40, that I actually had a conversation with, I started having a conversation in a relationship with my dad. In fact, I led my dad to Christ. So I know that when he left
Wow.
this earth, I knew where he went. And he told me, "Baby, you are the best decision I've ever made in my life. But it's also a decision, but it also hurts me that I wasn't there." And I said, "Well, stay focused on me being the best decision." So every time I do something positive, attribute it to the fact that you have a part and a stake of me being positive. And I want to say this for a moment. I want to say this for a moment. It was easier to forgive my father than it was my mother. And I think well, I'm gonna stop right there for a moment, because what I'm noticing and seeing that it's easier to forgive the person who wasn't there because there's no memories, there's no history, there's no nothing. But my mother was the disciplinary. She put me out. She, made me feel ashamed. She did that. So she did things that made it a little difficult back then for me to forgive her. But what I had to realize was she may have been a different woman and a different mother if he was a different and a better father. I just wanted to stop there because that's my current experience.
That's absolutely true. It really is. Because a lot of times when the father chooses or the father is not there, there's a lot that comes to the child, but we forget, we don't really don't zero in on what the woman has to deal with and what she's
Hmm.
left to deal with to raise the child, raise the children. And she's going through hurt and pain and she's dealing
Yeah.
with stuff and she's has a lot to battle. So that makes a lot of sense. Have your mother, I'm just curious, have your mother ever said, "I'm sorry" or apologize?
Mark, it's so funny you said that. My mother just told me she just apologized to me about 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I just was like, wow, right? I mean, because I
Yeah.
had forgiven her, I had learned to live beyond the apology. But to hear it still just gave a whole release, another level of validation as a person, as a daughter, as a woman, as a mother. It just gave such a release that I think I'm still kind of in a fog and it hasn't even really fully resonated. But to hear my mother tell me that, it really did. It was very impactful.
Very delayed. That's interesting because a lot of I've seen this with other people, other folks, where some people are sitting and waiting for the apology. Sometimes it may never come.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm curious to hear your answer, your response to this. Why you think it took your mother so long? And before you answer, I want to say this because a lot of people are affected by this. Their
Hmm.
parents fight hard not to apologize. And that hurts them even more that they don't get the apology. So,
Right.
but I'm wondering why, and we'll use your mother as an example, because a lot of the old school generations, they rather drive off a cliff than apologize for something.
Right.
Yeah, they rather do anything but to stand there and say I'm sorry. So,
Right.
and to me, I would assume your mother carried that for a long period of time before she gave it to you.
Hmm.
It
I
just
think so too.
Yeah, it didn't come overnight. It just didn't one night she wake up and was like, "Man, I want an apology." It was there, but for some reason she wouldn't bring it forth. And a lot of people deal with that. They sit on apologies. And to me, when you sit on an apology, it has to rip you apart. I don't care
Yeah.
what you say, how tough you think you are. When you're sitting on what God has you to birth and give to someone else, that has to rip you apart. And you're
Well,
strong
let
for
me.
not bringing it forth. I'm sorry. Please
No,
continue.
that's okay. No, that's okay. I was just going to share this first and foremost. A person has to be willing to want to do it, like you said. Two, they have to go on their journey of healing as well. And one of the things that we have to do, and I know this sounds non-churchy, and I'm gonna go here because I'm saying this, is we have to forgive ourselves. And I think
Beautiful.
it took a long time, or it took that time for my mother to begin to forgive herself, right? Because I had already given forgiveness, even though she didn't know it. But we have to forgive ourselves. And I say that it doesn't sound churchy because I remember being in a church and I was saying, we forgot we've got to forgive ourselves. And the pastor scorned me I mean, he disciplined me hard because he was like, and especially as a minister, he's like, you don't say that. If we had the ability to forgive ourselves, then what was Jesus dying on the cross for? And I'm like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute, you take this out of content. Like, yes, he died for us, but he also makes us aware of us, right? So that we can heal and be whole. And sometimes that is a hindrance to our healing because we won't forgive ourselves. We'll forgive everybody around us, but then we still have turmoil in our soul. So our soul is still sick while our spirit is getting fed, but we're still in turmoil. So just to someone listening, remember to forgive yourself and give yourself grace. It's okay and it's actually needed. So I believe that my mom needed to forgive herself first, number one. But then I started this off with telling you how it was easy, how it's easy for men to speak with me because I also came to my mother in peace. So when she saw that platform or that environment, when we speak and talk, it was like, oh, okay. It wasn't that I was bringing up stuff or reminding her or telling her this, that, and another. It was like, okay, listen, all I'm bringing you is peace and love, two characteristics that that our Father has. So I'm like, if I bring you this, I'm giving you good soil now to be able to feel comfortable to not only continue to forgive yourself, but to now come forth with what you've been battling with, because I'm not beating you and making you battle even more with it. When I told her, even after the apology, of course I accepted. And I said, and I just want to share this as we continue to get to know each other, you'll understand a lot of my characteristics and a lot of my thought process and my patterns and things of that nature came from what happened to me, but it's not a blame. It's just, I mean, being married 3 times, 3 abusive marriages. I was still navigating through some healing, right? From what happened as the child. But that wasn't what I gave you as a responsibility and holding you accountable, because we have to remember this as well. Where we choose not to forgive someone is where we stunt our entire self in growth. So if you can't forgive that mama at 16 or your wife at 36, developmentally, you're still there. And I'm just a person. I just want to grow.
Couldn't say it better. I love that. It's amazing. I'm big on, we forgiving ourselves, and I want to go back to the reaction you had about the pastors when they had a different reaction to it. And it's interesting because a lot of people fight not to forgive others, but don't even think of forgiving themselves. They don't even think of
Hmm.
that. They don't even know that process is available to them, and they're carrying that on for a long period of time. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised they
That's
react.
the oxygen, the mask and the oxygen.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got to put that oxygen on you first to live, to be able to. If you're gonna forgive somebody else, you got to forgive you.
yeah. Yeah, here again. It's amazing how a lot don't understand that process. Simple process. They don't get it, and you would think that here again. I just speak. If my finger points to you, God bless you. But you would think as ministers, in a sense, they would be more understanding and understand that process. I mean, sometimes, and I say what I say. It seems like the more times we read the Bible, the more time we don't understand the Bible. That's just my only statement.
Ah,
Now,
well.
that's me. I want to go
Yeah,
back
we
to
can
when you,
talk about that. Mhm.
yes, we will. We definitely will. Now, I want to go back
Okay.
to when you were, coming out of college, because again, I love that. I love what took place there. I love how God came in, spoke to you, moved you forward. And even in saying up from the ashes, I'll, say that from time to time because we should always glorify him for what he's done for us. We should always pay attention and
Absolutely.
notice. And a lot of times things happen in our life, we kind of pull into it and we accept the goodness of it. And then we're waiting for the bad to happen. It's like, no,
Right.
why not always celebrate those moments, those times, that what you felt, those achievements? And to me,
Mm.
I look at when I'm listening to you, that's a huge part of your foundation.
I didn't celebrate it though, Mark. I didn't celebrate me for a long, long, long time. Like I said, full transparency. It's probably just within the last 5 years that I begin to learn how to celebrate me more. Um, uh, I looked at it as this is just my duty. This is what I should do. This is just life. I didn't really put credence. I didn't put a lot of emphasis on what I accomplished because I was still navigating through seeing and celebrating me. And we can, I'm gonna go back to that for a second, but my oldest son passed away when he was 28 years old. And I went to California and adopted his daughter from out of the foster care system. And
Wow.
I left everything in Baltimore. I left, I got up and I moved, right? And people are like, oh my God, that is so noble. That's so, and I literally, it wasn't, it probably hasn't been until like the last 2, 3 years that I now look at it that way. Cause I just was like, what do you mean that was noble? That was my grandchild. That's my grandchild. What do you mean? Like, wouldn't anybody do that? And people are kind of looking at me like I have four foreheads and like, no, not everybody do that. And I was like, oh, you know what I mean? It's just things I do that I didn't put stock into celebrating or saying, oh, that was a good thing. But then when you have, and I just talked to this because I'm a therapist in therapy, when I talk about it, because my environment constantly had people who were consistently still pulling me down and pushing for the negative narrative, I was constantly swimming against that water. So it was kind of difficult to celebrate me in environments that people didn't like for me to celebrate me.
Hmm. Here's a question for you, Renee.
Mhm.
I mean, the answer is right in front of us both, but I want to hear it answered because just, just stop there. And what they said to you about your granddaughter, absolutely. That the average folk would not have done that. The average grandmother, grandfather would not have done that. And if that was the average, we would be a better place in our community, realistically.
Wow.
If that was the average, if it was 100%, imagine what we would be as people. Just imagine that, realistically.
Yeah.
So it trust me, their response to it was honest and no, it was real sincere because we don't see that every day, and we should. That's how life should be. But
Mm.
hearing what I've heard so far, and things that's transpired, why you think you're different? Why were you chose to rise? Why was you given an opportunity to rise above, to be who you are now? What's behind that?
So, because of my faith in what I believe, there's a scripture that says, many are called, but few are chosen. I just believe that I've been chosen, handpicked, and trusted by God to do a greater work for his kingdom. And first of all, to feel or believe that you are trusted by such a great being is an honor. He knew that I would go through all this. Jeremiah 29:11. He knew before I got here what was going to happen to me. It's so funny that my mother named me Renee. Renee means rebirth. I'm like, so he already knew, even stamping my name, that I would come to him and then work for him. And to me, that's an honor. I just believe that because before we got here, we were already predestined. And it was just my destiny, which ironically is the single that I had that was considered for a Grammy. It was just my destiny to have to go through this and navigate this for the sake of being a vessel he could use to help other people.
Again, another answer that is obvious, but how do you maintain your peace of mind?
Ah, I told you I'm a therapist in therapy. That's number one. And again, I told you early on, little Renee, right? Creative Renee. Renee creates all sorts of things: music, television, bracelets, t-shirts, hair. Just staying creative and active is one of the things I do. And just kind of to say that, I remember, because I've got stories, Mark, you're probably gonna have to have me back. But my third husband had me committed to a mental health hospital. That's a whole nother story. And when he did that, I had to go and see a psychiatrist. And when I went to see the psychiatrist, um, she told me, "It's nothing wrong with you. You're just stifled." And I just heard this on a social media. post. When a person who is a creative is stifled, they become depressed, they turn to other measures, they lose focus, they lose purpose and passion, and it puts them in a really dark place. And so, whenever I'm stifled and not able to be, it does all those things. And so, what I do is I have to push to keep doing those things, to keep my creativity active, my spirit definitely active, and again, continuously affirming and celebrating me with each little step. And sometimes that's hard, but I do it because I just really, I push to do it. Again, me and my words, I push past the pain to prosperity and promise.
Hmm. What pushes you past that, the pain, to prosperity? That's the thing, because that's where a lot of people may get hooked up. They may get, left and aside. They may come off the rail. What pushes you past that? What do you do to push past that?
One, I force myself to believe and know that there is a greater purpose, that just like the hands of time, it moves. Nothing stays the same. It only stays the same if we pitch a tent and stay there. So one of the things that I navigate through for myself and for people who have sessions with me is I say, allow yourself to feel, process it, and then get past it. That's how I push past it. I allow myself to feel because I didn't for a long time. Even grieving the passing of my son, it took me about 2 years before I even started to cry. And I'm like, I realized how it was tearing me up. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it's like, you know what? You have to allow yourself to process those feelings. Those emotions are real. And it's okay to have them. You just don't pitch a tent and stay there. So I do that. I listen to music, and this is a whole nother thing. I know, again, I'm not churchy, so I don't do all that gospel music things. But what I will do is I will listen to instrumental jazz, or or inspirational music that has less wording, unless it's a worship song, and I allow that to minister and really pour into my spirit to uplift it, because music is an uplifting thing for us as well, and we don't use it as much as we should for the purpose of uplifting us. So I'll do the music. I do reach out. This is new for me, but I will reach out every now and then, and to friends, to people I've known for years who know me, and I'll go, hey, rough time right now, dealing with some navigating some emotions that I'm looking like I might pitch a tent. I need to talk, and I think that's very healthy and very needed as well. Being able to be able to push past that pain is to stop doing it alone. Like I said, it's okay to heal out loud. It is. And when I say heal out loud, that's not go on Facebook and go, I hate all my family, they ain't no good, and this, that, and other, and all that. No, no, I'm not talking about that.
Oh my goodness.
But
Oh,
it is okay.
I-
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Ironically, when I first started doing this, it came to me, have men speak, and for
Hmm.
the most part, get naked and speak.
Yes.
Take everything down, take everything off. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and just open up and just speak, because as men, that's not normal for us.
Yes.
And when I started this, I spoke to several men to come on, and they were happy about the idea, blah blah blah. But it was just time to basically hit the on button. They wouldn't show up. I understood it.
Mm.
They would not show up. I want to go back to, and I think this is very beneficial. When you said when your son passed, you didn't cry for a period of time, and let's understand why. Because we all deal with grief differently, but we can only imagine the pain of losing a child at an earlier age. But beyond that itself, what was there for you not to release and cleanse and cry?
Well, couple things. One, I was in the process of adopting his daughter. I could not show vulnerability. I couldn't show a system. I couldn't show the California foster care system that I had any inabilities to raise this child. She was 20 months old, and I could not show them, or what I felt, I couldn't show them any weakness. But the other thing to losing a child, when you have more than one child, you still have to show up 100% for the children who are still there. And that was what I thought was a good thing, but it kind of turned out not to be because those two children viewed it as I didn't have feelings or emotions, or it didn't hit me as hard as it should have as a mother. But what I realized, two things. One, that that was my trauma response. When I'm inundated with too many emotions, I shut down, right? That's my trauma response. And then two, I thought I need to show you how I can be strong so that you can be strong. But they needed to see vulnerability at that time. So it wasn't like I said until I was closer in the adoption to her, because it took about 3 years. And I was just literally, I guess physically too, I just could not take it anymore. And I was in a 99-cent store in line waiting to pay for something. And just all of a sudden, I just broke down into tears. I just broke down into tears and I just couldn't stop. And that was very hard for me because throughout my life with all the things that I had gone through, I didn't show a lot of emotion. I didn't, because for me, showing emotion made me too vulnerable and made me a prime candidate for somebody to abuse me.
That's deep. That's real deep. I have a name for you from this day
Okay.
forward. You're going to be known here when Black men talk as Remarkable Renee.
Wow.
Yeah, because it just fits you perfectly in my mind because you have traveled through and you have swum through some waters, and some waters where a lot of people basically would have hid behind rocks. You have found ways to swim around, swim above, swim underneath to be who you are. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes we don't celebrate ourselves enough for who we are, especially when we reach a certain age. And I think sometimes we're modest, too modest at times, not to really pull back and understand and really see where we've come from, where we've traveled, where we've gained, how we've processed, how we're here. It's a beautiful thing that we wake up every morning, but we really, from time to time, should take time and just basically honor ourselves for who we are,
Yeah.
what we've been through. And I'm not saying you do or you don't, but just listening to you for the past several minutes, you're a remarkable woman, to say the least. And
Wow.
that may not be said to you often. You may not even feel that at times. I'm sure it's a
Mhm.
possibility, but always think about that because you are. You're nothing less than that. Never nothing
Yeah.
less than that. So that will be your name from this day forward right here is Remarkable
All
Renee because,
right.
yeah, because, you know, you illustrated and realistically, it's amazing how, for me, this is my personal thought process when when God said to me, "Up from the ashes," I had no idea how to really kind of configure it and put it together. So it took me a little time to kind of really kind of think about it. And the more I thought about it, the more He exposed things to me. And then when I came up with the idea of basically of what it is to basically start from one point, have someone speak and show their life, because we all have stories and show
Yes.
their story and basically give him the glory from bringing us from point A to point B. Because a lot of times we move and don't think about it. We just go there and enjoy point B for the moment and don't think about it. But he should always
Mhm.
get the glory for how we basically have transformed ourselves. And
Yes.
I could tell you in doing this, and as having you on and just in the process of doing Up from the Ashes, it's amazing what's coming forth. It's amazing, and we know when you bring something forth, it's not only the benefit of yourself, it's the benefit of others. Because
Yeah.
someone's going to hear something you said in the past several minutes, and it's going to register, it's going to hit home. It's going to be something that they can use to build on, to feel better, to feel inspired by. And then when that's happening,
Mhm.
what is more better than that? There's nothing better than
Yes.
that, realistically. So I appreciate you being here, Remarkable Renee. Yeah, as you said earlier, if you're welcome to come back on, you are more than, if you're happy to come back on, you are more
Mhm.
than welcome and invited to come back on. I'm gonna tell you right now,
Mm,
if you don't
thank
mind,
you.
I will the three marriages, if you don't mind, I'd like to go into depth of that. For some reason, I would like to understand. And I'm not trying to I laugh a lot. Laughter is my medicine, so I'm not laughing at that. But I think there's things about that that could be shown and talked about and it, basically opened up to and be great conversation, if anything. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love to have you back for that. And I appreciate you coming on here for Up from the Ashes and being part of, wow, something that I'm happy to be part of. And I'm just watching it unfold. My eyes when
Wow.
you're yeah, when you're speaking, my eyes are, are getting big. Of course, I'm sitting here just really soaking it all up, and I'm just glad to be where I could be at a place where you can come here and share your story. You and others
Yeah.
can really come and basically feel comfortable, because I believe that's a big part of it too. You need a space where you're going to feel comfortable to really kind of just basically open up. And this, I'm happy that this is it.